Good evening, everyone. Welcome to An Academy's Kaleidoscope Masterclass. I am Shubhangi and I'm part of the branding and communications team here at An, and I'll be moderating this session tonight. Before we dive right into Nishita's presentation, I would like to talk a little bit about An Academy and this series that we have running that is Kaleidoscope. And Academy, as most of you know, is a one-of-a-kind design upskilling platform launched by the Indian Institute of Art and Design, which is a leading design school, a brick-and-mortar institution in New Delhi. So IAD was established in collaboration with Kingston School of Art, London, and actually comes from the design pedigree of IAD in imparting design education for over a decade. We offer professional design courses for graduate and working professionals in the domains of UX UI design, graphic design, and interior design. And all of our courses are delivered in a live interactive manner. But today we will not be talking about the courses. We also have this series of masterclasses, which we call Kaleidoscope. And we are here for that today. So I would like to talk a little bit about Kaleidoscope. So Kaleidoscope is a series of online masterclasses that explore the myriad perspectives of design. Each webinar, talk, or discussion is conducted by a design maestro capable of breathing life into pixels and colors. And it is bound to leave you wanting more. Today, this session is led by Nishita Mohta, and we are exploring the topic design career and the inner critic. So I'll give you a brief overview about what we'll be talking about. Throughout our design careers, we're constantly looking to explore and evolve our creative voice. But in the process of doing so, the voice of the inner critic is at play as well. It's the voice that makes us question and doubt our ideas, causes mind blocks, and slows down our creative growth. This conversation on the psychology of creative fear is aimed at helping us all overcome the inner critic, one creative exploration at a time. And as I mentioned earlier, this session is led by Nishita, and I would like to introduce Nishita as well today. Nishita is a project management consultant for design studios across India. She has been working in the field of brand building for over 7 years, initially as a designer and then as a senior project manager at Thought Over Design, a brand strategy and design studio that's building the new generation of challenger brands in India. Through her personal creative practice, she has been researching, writing, and visualizing the concepts of creative fear and mind blocks, which we all face. You can get behind the scenes of her personal creative experiments on her Instagram page at The Experimenter. Today, we're also joined by our head of academics, Prachi Mittal, and she'll be here with us throughout the session. With that, I hand it over to Nishita.
Thank you so much, Shubhangi, and thank you everyone who's joining. I can still see people are joining in, and very kind introduction by Shubhangi. To begin, I would love to get a sense of who all we have in the audience today. You all would, I think someone pointed out that you're not seeing the mic and camera option because it's a webinar format, but please feel free to continuously use the chat option and we'll look at it intermittently and respond to you. So just take a minute and let me know what do you do professionally, or if you're studying, what are you studying? I would just absolutely love to get to know you guys. So yeah, we'll just take a minute for that. Wow, we have a teacher with us. That's interesting. That's the first answer. Okay, learning design, footwear designer. Wow. Engineers moving to design, artists, HR, graphic artist, medical student, but passionate about art and design. That's amazing. Trishita, learning graphic design.
Nishita, are you there with us? Or so we'll just Shubhangi, is Nishita frozen for you as well?
I think she's gotten,
Yeah.
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 Right.
So we'll just give it a minute, and in the meanwhile, everybody else can continue to put in their introductions, and Nishita will join back. We'll just give it a minute, and I think she'll be back. Okay,
Yes.
welcome
Guys,
back.
I'm so sorry. My video dropped off at a very timely moment
That's all
as I
right.
started presenting.
Okay. Yeah, but you can
Okay.
sort of bring up your video now, your screen share. Okay, it's dropping off every time she's trying to bring it up. Shubhangi, है ना? Oh, it's here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I've switched
think
my connection and I hope it'll be fine now.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So, Shubhangi's done a very kind job of introducing me. I hope you all can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the backstory to my design career, which a lot of people ask me, and which is why I just start out by explaining it, is I started out as an architect. I studied architecture at SPA Delhi, and now I'm a design ops consultant, and I work with creative founders to build better processes and workflows for their team. I've done it for 3 years at Thought Over Design, which Bangi spoke about, and now I'm doing it with other studios as well. So now these two things don't connect very well, right? It's not a very direct career progression either, and there have been a lot of stepping stones in between. And they look like this. I did graphic design, jumped to exhibition research and design, moved into travel curation, communication design, online teaching, and somehow finally ended up at design operations. Also moved cities, states in between. And it's been a really interesting path for me. Safe to say, in a nutshell, I've just explored a lot of my interests and capabilities. But now I've landed on a profession that is very niche in design, and I thoroughly enjoy it and see myself sticking to it. People tell me it's a very unique combination of skills that suit my capabilities, and I'm happy to be working in it right now. Why am I sharing all this? Because in hindsight, when I was actually doing all that exploration I talk about, all these experiments, they were what career coaches call job crafting. Now, job crafting is defined as proactive behavior that people use when they feel that changes in their job are necessary. And it all sounds very good, right? And I think it applies really well to just designing your career through iterations. But I'm not a career coach, and I only learned about this term like some 6 months back. When I was actually in the middle of it over the last decade almost, I thought I was just confused. I was being fickle minded, that I didn't have the kind of commitment it takes to stick to one thing and just become really good at it. And I feel some of you might resonate since so many of you are like in a career pivot at the moment. In fact, I was called irresponsible for not sticking to one thing, and I ended up believing it. But I kept doing it because I guess having come from architecture school with all its diverse subjects from sociology to graphic design to building construction technical stuff like that had ingrained in me this sort of belief that I can do anything and everything I want. And I jumped to new opportunities whenever I found them, and I would create personal projects if I didn't find an opportunity, because that personal project would let me put my work out into the world. Life was always interesting, and I learned a lot with every new thing I did. But sort of self doubt and questioning was also always constant. Now, in the years since then, I've come to understand that there is this inner critic, and this is how I visualize my inner critic. Okay, it's someone my age, but very judgmental and always like bursting with questionable energy. And this inner critic is especially present in those who are in the creative field. And during my phase of exploration, that inner critic would just keep interrupting me. It would say things like, "You're not qualified enough to take on this project. Can you really freelance? No one will take you seriously." Or even that your personal project is not good enough to share publicly yet. And I wonder, does this sound familiar to any of you? a voice that pretends to be the more cautious side of you, that comes up with a dozen different reasons to not do something new, which reminds you of your setbacks only and tells you it's outrageous if you dream too big. That is the inner critic, the voice of fear in action, which stops us from taking action towards our goals. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Because it's not just something that we experience emotionally, but also something that has a very real impact on our day to day project work as well as career progression. And the good thing is that we can totally learn how to navigate it. So why not talk about it and be more mindful of it, right? As creatives, whether we are involved in functional creativity, like building technology driven solutions or developing a marketing strategy, or we create more expressive work, like visuals or performances, which make us think more deeply and question the status quo. Creative thinking at the end of the day is what drives all of these pursuits. And creative fears are what cause mind blocks and stop us from taking action towards them. Now, I was very curious about this whole phenomena. And so in 2020, I started my personal project called Vaccines for Fear. Through both research and self reflection, I started coming up with these chats between my voice of creative fear and voice of wisdom. Out of 80 artworks that I created, there are five which I find are the most common when we're trying to make big decisions or just decisions which feel big for our career, whether they're big or small, right? And I want to share these reminders that we all experience the experience of this mind blocks is a very universal one. It's not just something that you or me or one person is feeling. Everyone experiences this at some point or the other. And I'll show you five artworks, I'll talk about them, but if you feel like you're resonating with them, feel free to type it in the chat as well, right? So, the first one. The first is when you hear the inner critic say, I'm not qualified for it. I have a take on this, which I don't know how many people agree with, but I feel our educational choices and professional opportunities impose really, really strong labels on us. Someone once pointed out to me that educational options available to us are less than the real life career options that we're actually free to explore, because we'll study for a certain time, but we have our whole life to continue working. Now, while there may be a defined number of and type of courses to study, professional roles can be really unique and a lot of our skills can be transferable. For example, I specialize in creating workflows and management processes only for creative studios. And I'm someone who really values structured learning. So I would love to take an immersive course, get qualified, and have someone give me a certificate saying that, yes, Nishita is qualified to do this. But after having searched high and low, I've come to understand that there's no exact course. So what I see are there are these generalized MBAs or just surface level understanding through videos. And who's going to give me this certificate of qualification if I want to keep doing this work? The answer is nobody. Qualification is like this permission slip from a recognized authority, but there is no authority when you're doing something so new in a specific industry. It also means that when you're selecting what courses you want to study, we have to focus more on the education we'll gain rather than what the on paper qualification or the title or the label is going to be. So the only aim that I keep is to ensure that I'm capable of doing what I'm doing. I try to ensure that I dive into my knowledge of the industry, that I stay open to learning from people who are senior to me in adjacent or related fields. And I keep ensuring that the work I do is finally up to the mark. So the reminder here is to just keep reminding ourselves, time and again, that let's think more about our capability, build that. Don't pause your creative journey because you're waiting for someone to validate you. All right. That's it for the first one. The second one is when we feel we need better tools before we can begin. The voice in our head will say, you need an iPad to create art like that. You need a mic and a better phone to create videos. You need to get a full subscription to so and so software. And of course, all of that costs money and you can't spend on that right now. Therefore, you cannot create right now. That's what the voice in our head will say. But I want to tell you to get scrappy with your creation process. Start where you are. First, put your idea out there, then make it shiny later. Even with this project that I'm showing you guys right now, when I first started it, I used to have a really good Microsoft Surface with a stylus, and that made it very convenient to do collages in Photoshop. But my stylus stopped working just 3, 4 collages into the project. And we were under lockdown. Like I said, this was in 2020. That could have become another reason for me to not continue the 30-day project. And just one of the many resistances that come up when we're trying to do something of our own, right? But somehow I ended up doing the project with a mouse and sometimes the touchpad of my keyboard. Was it an absolute pain to do this entire project without the right tools? If you think about it in terms of patience and the well-being of my wrist, yes, big pain. Could this artwork have been easier if I waited to fix my stylus? Yeah, probably much easier. But am I super relieved and just glad I did the project anyway? Yes, because few months later I was already on to bigger things, right? Ideas are fleeting and it's better to create than to wait. So here with this artwork, the reminder to ourselves is that a better camera, correct paints and paper, better software, and every tool that stands as a mental block can come into the picture later and make your work more shiny eventually. First, just create. And even today, like I saw some post by a page about how real designers don't use Canva, and I've written this whole rant on my Instagram about it. And so many people agree, like the entire creative community. There are some people who will tell you you only have to work with the best tools, but dozens of people have like supported that point that you don't need to just focus so much on the tools. You have to focus on what you're creating. So at any point in your career, if you feel like you need to wait, don't. Now, moving on. When we're new at something, we start feeling that everyone else is so much better, and that can become really demotivating for us depending on how we're thinking, right? And it happens very subconsciously because we want to be really good. And that's a great thing to strive for. The problem is expecting it immediately. This can happen at any point in our design careers and even outside of it. The most recent time I fell into this trap of comparison is when I started attending MMA classes. That's mixed martial arts for everyone's clarity. I really enjoyed it, but there were a lot of guys in the class who had been coming there for months or even years, and we all used to practice together. There was no like separate beginners and separate like senior people studio. So on certain days, it was just too easy to fall into this trap of feeling bad for myself. I would feel like, oh, like my inner critic, not me, my inner critic would say things like, you're slower than the others, definitely not as strong, and you don't even go to classes as often as everyone else. But what was not easy was to acknowledge my pace for what it is and why it is so. So after talking to a friend, I started reminding myself that I have a starting point very different from where others are in their journey. And my initial pace won't match theirs either, given how different our journeys are. So, and even more importantly, just because we're different, it doesn't mean I should turn a blind eye and ignore everyone else who does better than me. While it's true that, the only race you should be running is against your past self, there is so much to learn from the others. So the reminder here is just to put our egos aside and start seeing other people as inspiration for ourselves to do better and trust that we will get better too with time. And I picked this one because I feel it's so applicable since so many of you might be students at And Academy and you're all coming from different parts of life, right? Someone might be 40 years old, but with like 0 years of graphic design experience, while someone who's 25 might already have a lot of experience. And there are all these like complex dynamics that come into play, and we start comparing ourselves. But anytime you feel that slight envy, turn it into a source of like inspiration for you. Try to do that. It's hard, but like at least we can try, right? Now, a related mind block is also that even if we're not comparing ourselves with anyone else, just measuring ourselves harshly against our own expectations. And for this artwork, I'm going to read an abbreviated section of what Ira Glass had said. And just give me a moment. Yeah. So this abbreviated version goes like this, that nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish someone had told this to me, that all of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap for the first couple of years that you're making stuff. What you're making isn't so good, okay? It's trying to be good, it has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer, and your taste is good enough that you can tell what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you can do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work, put yourself on a deadline so that every week, every month, you know you're going to finish one thing. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. It takes a while, it's going to take a while, it's normal to take a while. And you just have to fight your way through that. That was the lovely writing of Ira Glass, and I love it so much. I tell everyone to watch the video. My students have to watch this video, and I didn't want to change a word of it. But yeah, amazing piece of writing, right? Okay, and I will now move on to the fifth and final mind block that I want to discuss today, which is knowing that there's always a chance that we'll fail when we try something new, and obviously not being comfortable with that. At moments like these, the inner critic says that this might fail and I look like a fool. This voice in my head tries to mock me the minute I get excited about a new glorious plan that, oh, you're going to ruin it. The honest truth is that even with the most elaborately planned out projects have the possibility of failure. So instead of running away from that possibility, why can't we just account from it from the very beginning? And in order to do that, I have started reframing all my glorious daydreams as experiments instead of plans that I have to accomplish. And that wordplay goes a long way. Needless to say, like dealing with that failure will look different in client projects and in personal projects. And we can talk about that another time. But for now, the reminder for ourselves is that we have to give ourselves the permission to experiment. Embrace the possibility of failure and prepare to fail forward after learning from the experiment. Those were some artworks which illustrated like the key things that I keep thinking about, that I keep writing about, and you're welcome to see more online. But when I started posting these at first, I really didn't like. It was so scary at first because even while I was writing about mind blocks, I still had a lot of them, and I fear judgment too. But the way this work started resonating with other creatives was both shocking and comforting to me. So I kept making, and I even started writing long form essays. And it's been a long, ongoing project for me. So now, 3 years, 80 artworks, and 23,000 words later, this project has completely changed how I see the creative process. And there are three big learnings that I absolutely have to share with you. The first, fear is a friend. It's not the smartest friend you'll have and often overprotective, but it's a good friend it's an old friend with good intentions. Our fear is a self-protective biological response coming from this amygdala in our brain, and it makes us move against any possibility of danger. In the primitive times, it may have been against predators and natural forces. Today, it may be any risk of physical harm, like you're going on your first deep sea dive and you don't know what's going to happen, or emotional harm, like the possibility of losing a prestigious job or scholarship. When we experience fear, the amygdala is actually doing its job to warn us against stressors like uncertainty, change, and struggle. Now, the catch is that these same three stressors, which signal serious danger to the brain, are also part of every healthy challenge that we face. So, for this primitive part of the brain, a worthy professional risk, which is a healthy challenge, can feel as dangerous as jumping off a cliff. So, we have to remember that, like all other emotions, fear is information. It's trying to tell us something and point us in the direction of safety. But danger and safety can look different depending on what situation you're in. Because the feeling of fear occurs very impulsively, it's up to us to evaluate it, check if we're really in danger or just being challenged, and then act accordingly. So, just like me, if you ever like goofed up on stage and forgotten your words in front of an audience, your amygdala will try to save you and stop you from going on stage ever again. It's then up to us to tell our overprotective friend that, hey, don't worry, I got this. I've practiced and I'm now better prepared for the challenge. So, at this stage, a question for all of you. Can you think about something that you're interested in, but which feels like a professional risk? You just have to write yes or no in the chat. You don't have to disclose what your idea is, but let's share if we're resonating with this so far.
Whole lot of yes, one no.
Hmm.
Without counting Nishita, I can just say that the majority is yes.
Yeah. Also glad that everyone's like tuned in and able to respond.
Hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Like, good to know that you're resonating because that brings me to my second learning. And thank you all for sharing it. Just always takes effort to think. You're not expected to think, but suddenly you have to. And that brings me to my second learning, which I want to share with everyone, which is that creative fear is a learned reflex, and we can also unlearn it. So we just talked about fear, how fear in genuinely dangerous situations, and how there's fear in, let's say, creative or professional situations. But let's understand a little bit more about it, right? So there's this hierarchy of fears, and the ones at the base relating to bodily harm and death, they have survival values and they exist in all human beings from birth. But as we move up the pyramid, we see the fears which develop in us based on our own life experiences. Creative fear is a type of ego death, which sits at the absolute top. And it's not a fear that we are born with. Everyone may or may not have that fear. Think about it. No 3-year-old child with a Lego set in front of them ever says that, oh, I'm not feeling inspired enough, or what I made isn't good enough. I need to learn more before I can start, and then like go watch 10 tutorials on how to do a Lego building, right? Children are like the most fearless, most fun, creative people out there. But those sentences that I said, like about fear, not feeling inspired, not feeling good enough, that is how we start thinking as we grow up, right? We humans are a social species, and growing up, we get very deeply affected by our environment and culture. A teacher's comment, how tolerant a parent is, the friends we keep, all of these things can push us either towards or away from our sense of imagination, curiosity, and courage. Now, growing up, we learn to fear failure only after we experience the disapproval, shame, or humiliation that might come with it. The fear of failure makes us stick to what's been tried, tested, and pre approved so that we stay safe. But by doing that, fear can paralyze our creativity. So, now that we've understood a little bit about fear, the question is, how do we change our relationship? How do we unlearn the non essential fear that we have learned in our lives? In my case, seeing all my actions as experiments lets me also see failure as feedback, something that guides my next step instead of causing this feeling of judgment and shame. And for example, I've been writing a lot since the last 2 years. Now, my inner critic would make me think I have to write the best selling book. Otherwise, what is the whole point of all this effort, right? It's a lot of effort to write a book. But the mindset of experimentation has allowed me to say, let's see what will happen if I write a book. And even before that, I asked myself, what will happen if I write one article a month? Let me at least start small, right? So in January 2022, I started with one essay a month. And throughout the year, I wrote on topics important to both me and my creative community. It was all quite meta because I was writing about mind blocks and also struggling through them at the same time. I was really giving my best shot, but these writings never felt perfect to me. So I would always struggle and kind of hesitate before sending them out to my audience. But then I would also remind myself that published is really better than perfect. And with that in mind, I just kept sending out my writings to subscribers month after month. Sometimes I even got very heartfelt emails from readers thanking me for my work. Other times there was radio silence in response. And that's all right, because I was no longer looking to complete a bestseller. I'm a first time writer, so with this experiment, I was creating a very large volume of meaningful work and slowly becoming comfortable with the positive, the negative, and even the neutral outcomes of sharing it with everyone. And in the process of doing so, I was able to unlearn a lot of creative fear and self doubt in me. And I think that would be a very big win for any creative. So, before moving on to my third learning, again, I have a question for you. Like, do you have a creative experiment that you really want to do, or a personal project you really want to work on? And you can again just say yes or no, but if you want to, please share with us what the project is. And I think it brings a really inspiring energy to the conversation. What I generally say is that if we had more time, like also like share references and inspiration with each other. If you see someone's project that you have a really great inspiration for, please send it across directly to them. So we'll just take a minute to look at the answers. Affirmation posters, that's amazing. I feel like that's very close to actually my own personal project. So take a look. Happy to give you ideas. Awesome. More people who want to do collages, platform for learners, design your own cafe and art studio. I love that. Thank you, Ria. Love this space. Making a moon art with cement. Oh, wow. I love these offline projects, you know. Haven't started yet, but creating creatives to inspire people to be more health conscious. That's awesome. Visualization of own stories, designing a product from scratch, hands-on design work. Wow. Commercial site design. We have so many such diverse projects. I think that's the awesome part of this. Okay, please keep sharing in your own time. And for now, I will move on to the third learning and I will come back and look at these projects later. So, and also like I'm very excited to see like how these projects go. So if like you end up working on it, please do send them across. It'll be great. Um, and the reason I say this is because I very, very strongly believe and I really encourage everyone to work on a personal project because creating personal projects is like creating prototypes for the career you're designing for yourself. The great thing about personal projects is that you can create work that is very unique to your interests, which shows off your strongest skills, and it helps you develop your creative voice. So here is another reminder to go with that. If your inner critic says that we need to learn more before we can start, remember that you will always learn the most after you start. That is why good creative education has so much emphasis on the doing and the creating and not just the absorption of information. And especially as designers, I see some of the projects which are like high on physical creation and material involvement and all that. But especially for those people who want to do posters and things that are done digitally, you don't have to wait to be commissioned or hired to create our dream projects. And a lot of the smaller physical projects can also be done without any client or patron or anything like that. So yeah, just if you're capable of it, if you have the material, and remember my first or second reminder that use whatever tools you can. Just start your personal projects, and so many of your answers about what direction your design career should take, what is the specialized niche you should pick up, all of these answers will start coming to you. Okay, and for now, I'll just move on to my third learning about creative fear, and that is to be creative, remember to act, and remember to rest. Now, fear is not the reason behind every mind block. Sometimes we're just really exhausted. The creative fear is, the creative process isn't all about racing towards the end product. You all know that. It's also about knowing when to pause, maybe to learn something new, gain a new perspective on your ideas, maybe to just do something completely unrelated and unwind, maybe to take a nap and switch off. But at the end of the day, you know best how your body and mind want to rest. Because deep rest, both physical and mental, is a very integral part of the process, and it's not something that we should save for the end only. Because what if you're working on a 2 year project? You can't hustle for 2 years and not give your body rest. It's something that fuels us throughout. Rest fuels us. So, yeah, those were my three learnings. Now, today, as a result of the experiment that I talked about, I'm very proud to hold a complete draft of my book in hand. And the thing is, it's such a long project that it's still a steady work in progress. But setting gentle goals for myself helped me strive towards doing really good quality work without falling into the very paralyzing trap of perfectionism. And I think that's really important, like setting gentle goals instead of trying to be perfect. Now, at this stage, like the awesome thing is that I've been able to open it up to early readers, which is a big milestone because it feels like when I started, it was just this blip of an idea, and I was questioning whether I should even do it. Will I be good enough? I'm not a writer. And even though my book is not complete, it's a big milestone. That being said, I'm also in the middle of yet another experiment of editing, adding more research, re editing, designing, publishing, marketing, doing all of this, and none of this I know how to do it perfectly. There is uncertainty, change, and struggle here too. So, no matter how much I write about it, I know my inner critic is not going anywhere. As I keep trying to push the boundaries of my own comfort zone, every time I do something new, and there are so many new things to be done in this world, I will face my inner critic time and again. But I've also learned not to listen to it blindly. So, in the face of a mind block, there are three questions that I start with, and maybe you will find these helpful too. The first is, can I sense some fear of failure? If yes, please remember to give yourself the permission to experiment. We spoke about this. Second, is it something that's really very difficult? Please remember you don't have to do hard things alone. Ask an expert, collaborate. It's amazing that so many of you are taking a very well structured course to teach yourselves and keep learning till it gets easier. And third, am I physically or mentally tired? If yes, please let yourself rest. Whether it means winding down or taking a detour and jumping into new experiences, go do whatever it is that fuels your mind and pool of inspiration. I really hope this talk has been one of those things for you. And I sincerely hope it nudges you to just think about your own personal projects and your design career with a fresh lens. And I would love to keep this conversation going. So feel free to connect with me later. And thank you for being such an amazing audience. I have a little gift for all of you. It's a digital product that I've created. It's called the Bare Minimum Journal, which is a digital tool for checking in with yourselves. And it has 60 spreads that you can fill bare minimum journaling, and 5 curated artworks from the series I showed you, and 10 art-based prompts for self-reflection. So the link is down there, and you can read more about it and start using it. That's it from my end. Thank you for being so awesome.
Thank you, Nishita. I think a much needed conversation in any design community or community of creative practitioners. A little bit of trivia for everybody's benefit. I actually connected with Nishita over her talk on a similar topic. And and that those were very early days of And. And when I heard her speak, I knew that at some day I would like the And learners to hear about it. So it took us time, but I think,
Yeah.
but I'm glad that we are doing this. So, so yeah, I'm so happy, Nishita, that we finally were able to hold this conversation with the And learners, and it also warms my heart to see that there's so many of the names in the attendee list that I can recognize as our students. So, I'm so glad about that. Um, yeah, and we are now ready for some questions
Yes.
that Nishita can answer. Shubhangi, if I can request you to just guide everybody where to put their.
Yes. So if you have any questions, I request you to put it in the Q&A box. We were using the chat box to use as a prompt for answers that Nishita had put on screen. But now I would request you to put your questions in the Q&A box so that we can answer those systematically. Before we move on to question and answers, I would like to congratulate Nishita. This was a wonderful session, wonderful talk. This hits very close to home because this is a topic that we keep on dabbling with day in and day out. So great job addressing it and bringing out in the public. So we had previously asked our students to send in their questions if they had any, and I don't know
Okay.
if Shana is here today with us, she's joined the session or not, but she'd sent in her question um, uh, beforehand. So I would like to begin with that question. Meanwhile, everybody is putting in their question. Shana asked, in the design world, which things drive you more to go deep into it from the beginning of your journey?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, she is asking in the world of design, which are
Yeah.
the things that drive you to go more and more deep from the beginning of your journey?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think I've been following my curiosities a lot, and I have to say it comes with a disclaimer. Like, I have the privilege that I don't have anyone to support financially. So, my parents, I don't need to support. I don't have any children. So, I've really just been following my curiosity. And it started with architecture school. I think that is the place which sparked all of it. Because if you're studying sociology, very theoretical things, and then going out and working with cement in your building construction studio, it makes you realize how much is out there in the world and that you can learn everything, right? And yeah, like it just made me feel that everything, whatever you kind of put time and effort into, most of it is achievable. I obviously can't go and become a doctor right now, but a lot of other things within the world of design, it really flows into each other. There are a lot of transferable skills one from the other. So if you see my journey, architecture to graphic design was very smooth because graphic design was one of the subjects we were taught. Then I went to exhibition. I think, yeah, like if I see something that really inspires me and I'm thinking, can I make it? I do it as a personal project, and maybe sometimes I get hired to do it professionally as well. So I wonder if that answers her question.
At and we seem to be really enjoying architects and their journeys.
Yeah.
I had to say is I am,
Shubhangi incidentally is an architect.
yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. We have another question. Somebody is saying, can you share the link of your bare minimum journal in the chat? Yes, we will
Yeah,
do.
I'll just do that.
Ria is asking, have you come across artists who are self-made or who have inspired you?
Yeah, so many of the artists are self-made because I are you talking about a particular kind of artist? I know a lot of illustrators, painters, uh, funny enough, now that I think of it, because my circle is of architects, a lot of them are architects who ended up going into illustration, who ended up going into art, but a lot of them uh, have just picked it up as a hobby while doing something else, maybe reached it a little later in life. Is this person looking for more like leads on like who to follow and whose work to follow? Is that the kind of question this is?
I don't know. Can you give me more context? Yeah. Ria, if you could.
Yeah, she will do it. In the meanwhile,
Yes,
let's move
yes.
to the next.
Meanwhile, let's move on.
So,
Some
in short, I just read Ria's question. So, yes, I have come across people who are self-made, but I also think that having some sort of, whether it's formal training in an allied field or whether it's parents or an older sibling who has told them a little bit, that little bit of like, how do you build your taste? How do you build your uh, sense of design and sense of art? Usually I've noticed people have something like that in their life. So self-made is never self-made in isolation. There's always a source of inspiration or some insights around you. Yeah.
And I think, Nishita, if I can add to it, uh, you may not study art or that profession, but you would, like Nishita said, you would do something in the allied space, because that is how you feed your inquiry. It's a quest that you have, you might have a
Yeah.
creative quest and you want to, you just want to pursue it, but you will need these scaffolds of some sort of either guidance, mentoring, coaching, education, formal training, everything, any of
Yeah.
that. You will need that. Other than that, I know that, but this is a philosophical topic, so I think I can go philosophical. I think every artist is self-made because you make your art from the self. You put a bit of, so I know what the way you said self-made, I understand that, but you can also look at self-made. Every artist is self-made because you can, uh, we at and as well as at IID, we always say this, that everybody studies the same curriculum, but
Yeah.
what you learn and what you become as a result of it will be different. Each one will be different. So in
Yeah.
that sense, I think everybody is self-made.
Absolutely. I
I
agree.
would like to add to this conversation that when we were in art school, all of our teachers would always say that art is very indulgent. You have to indulge yourself and your practice, and the more you do, the more you create or to learn. So yeah, um, somebody is asking if we do any task without acknowledging any fear, one day a fear will come to us. This will definitely hold us back for a long time and make us alone.
Yeah.
What should we do in such a case?
That is why I started writing about these things because as creatives, we're always doing something new, and it's biologically, neuroscientifically in us to feel a little bit of resistance. The gap is in learning how to identify that, okay, now I'm feeling this fear. And it takes years of work, but you can always start by reading about fears. And that's why, like, I like to talk about this topic very openly on as many forums as possible, because it all starts with developing that little bit of knowledge about, okay, this is fear, this is what I'm feeling. See, if we didn't know that, okay, what's a good example? I don't want to say something really silly, but okay, let's talk about colors. Like, if I didn't know that purple is called purple, there is no way for me to identify it or use it or make another color out of it, right? We need that base knowledge. So I think that's similarly, we need to know about what different kinds of fears there are. That is why when I used to put out my artworks, people would be like, oh, you just articulated what I was feeling, but I didn't realize that I was feeling that. So that's always helpful. And talking to people around you who kind of experience the same thing might be helpful if they have kind of reflected on it a little bit. So I think this comes with reading and self-reflection.
Ma'am, you're on
You're
mute.
on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So if I can further that conversation, uh, the way to deal with, so fear is primarily a feeling. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
an experience that you feel. You don't. So experiences can be doing, and experiences can be from feeling. It's a feeling experience. And any feeling that you have to deal with, good, bad, ugly, whatever, you have to first recognize it and acknowledge its existence. Only then can you deal with it or process it. Um, and I hate to again, say something which is so often said, because I think the next question is also about that, that the what is courage? Courage is not absence of fear. Courage is moving despite fear. So
Yeah,
fear is going to be there, you know.
yeah,
Uh, and fear is one, the inner critique, and actually, if you go further below the inner critique, the fear comes, and it may be like Nishita's talk was also that it's a learned behavior. It's something that you pick on the way. It's conditioning that we go through. But recognizing all of this, recognizing your need for validation, recognizing your need for keeping up a certain kind of image, recognizing, you know, uh, where do you attach your identity to? What do you attach your identity to? And there are no judgments to it. Okay, why are
yeah,
you attaching this or that?
yeah,
That's where it will begin. I always used to, Nishita, in my classes also used to tell students that the pressure of performance, or the performance pressure, is a performance killer.
hmm,
You and I so often see not only learners, people also, wanting to be in a performative space, not realizing that you can sometimes just be doing, or like you said, experimenting. You're not always on stage performing.
yeah, yeah.
So
And because you said that, like, with every emotion, you have to kind of learn to acknowledge it. There were books that I read before I did the project, and I think that's why the project naturally flowed from me. One book that I recommend to everybody is called The Artist's Way. It's a classic. It's written by Julia Cameron, and that was the first book I read, which made me very aware that all of this happens with all of us. There are other books like this, and maybe I'll compile a list and share it sometime later. But The Artist's Way is the first book that I recommend to all 91 of you. So please go pick it up. Yeah, you learn a lot about acknowledging your fears and mind blocks.
Okay. Jagriti is asking, how can we recognize the critical mindset that reflects our reality, yet still find tranquility when confronted with it? I think this is sort of like a subset of a question that we've already answered.
Yeah, like you have to, with any emotion, you kind of have to see it. And that's why I shared the backstory behind all of those artworks, how you move from acknowledging the fear and then kind of making peace with it. The fear doesn't go away, but eventually you get used to just saying that, yeah, this fear is there because I'm doing something new, and it's not going to affect anything. Nothing bad is going to happen. But you have to, like, kind of think about it a little more deeply. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Somebody's asking, as creatives, we face a lot of creative blocks. Kindly suggest some quick tips or maybe your personal hacks to deal with a mental or a creative block.
Journaling, long form journaling. I actually want to, yeah, like that's my one answer, because they're asking for quick hacks. There are no quick hacks. It takes years to learn these things. But if you would really want a quick hack, please sit down, write your thoughts, and read better. Read, listen to people who are talking about these things, gain information, and then reflect on it for yourself. Yeah.
I was also thinking, Nishita, this and throughout my journey as a educator, one of the keen interests that I have had is this, that what are the struggles that a student goes through, and you know and therefore how as a teacher can you help. And
Yeah.
I realized, I smiled when I heard a quick tip or a quick hack, and I'm so glad that you said that there are no quick hacks. you
Yeah.
know you have you have to swim through the moat to reach the castle.
Yeah.
You have to go through it. There are no shortcuts, there are no quick fixes. you have to go through it. You have to go through the growing pains. You have to climb the tree to get to the fruit. You have to do all of that. I think sometimes when the quest is bigger, I think for Nishita also probably that quest was bigger than the fear.
Yeah.
Then you can go.
Yeah. So there are a lot of very interesting questions in the chat, and Shubhangi, is it possible for you to save them? And I would love to just answer them later because they're all very, very
Yes,
relevant.
I will actually have access to chat, and then do you want to write the
Later,
questions now?
maybe later we can do, but let's quickly go through the Q&A
Yeah.
first.
So Aditi is asking, how do you navigate being financially stable, but at the same time exploring a different career path? What has
Yeah.
been your experience like?
Yeah. So I think with that, I want to say that in my early 20s, I was not financially stable. I did explore a lot of things and I was earning. And as a designer, as a creative, we never taught how to figure out, and especially if you're freelancing, we never taught like how much money to ask for or what are the professional side of freelancing. So I did struggle a lot with being financially stable. But at the same time, like I acknowledged, I did not have to support my parents. I did not have to support anyone else. I only had to support myself. So stability was not very important for me in my early 20s. Um, in my late 20s, I started working towards it. I have taken up a job, like for 3 years, I did work in a job and I explored all my interests through personal projects. In fact, all of the artwork that you see, all of the writing I did in 2022, it happened while I was in a full time job. And that gave me the stability, peace of mind, financial stability, so that whatever little time I had left, I could put it in creating without putting the pressure of money on my creativity. So even right now, what I do professionally is a high value, um, it's a high value profession. I'm a design operations consultant, and it's up to me, like as a consultant, I can choose how much to work, but I won't put the pressure of earning on something like writing. Like such books which are written with 10 years of effort sell for 200 rupees. So that's not realistic. But yeah, like I actually, it's very interesting. People say like Ikigai was a very popular thing sometime back. I think it still is. And I also really believed in it. And I was like, I want to do the one thing which will earn me money, which will be valuable, which will make me happy, and whatever the fourth thing was. And I realized that's very tough. Like, why can't I do two things? And that is sometimes easier to do. One for your financial stability, and one where you can just experiment without any constraints. And that leads to very amazing things. And actually, my personal projects have given me great opportunities. The reason I'm here today is because Prachi saw my talk about vaccines for fear. The reason I got the chance to teach at And Academy is because of my personal project. But I don't get financial stability from literally selling those art prints, right? So that's a very interesting balance that you have to try to maintain.
Also,
But great question.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just add one this thing to it is that like which is extending what Nishita said. I think satisfaction is comes or the contentment comes in the whole. Every part of it will not give you satisfaction in all areas, but
Yeah.
on the whole it's like I think the Indian concept of a thali, like so you like the Western people would eat a sandwich or eat a bowl of pasta and that would be their meal, but the Indian concept is a thali. You'll have a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this. So I think the Indian concept of thali is great for this because कहीं से मीठा आएगा, कहीं से खट्टा आएगा, कहीं से ठंडा आएगा, कहीं से गरम आएगा, and but on the whole your meal will be wholesome. Similarly, your life will be wholesome because you do a little bit of this, you get this from this quarter and this from this quarter, and so on and so forth. You know, so don't
Yeah.
don't put so much pressure on one thing like what Nishita said ना कि सारा प्रेशर एक ही चीज पे कि इसी से मुझे सब कुछ मिल जाए.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think this is a growing, I want to say, like for the lack of a better word, a trend also that I've seen in the now generation, the millennials and the Gen Z, that they do want to be doing multiple things. And why must not we be doing all things at once? We must.
Absolutely, absolutely. And matlab more and if you don't want to do many things, you want to do one thing very deeply, that is also
That is
fine.
all. Yeah.
Like to each his own. You want your bowl of pasta and not a thali, and that is also fine, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay, so Shiksha is asking, can creativity be learned or is it some talent that people are born with it?
Every single person is born creative. I I will not go back on that. And think about your 5-year-old self, like every 5-year-old is creative. Now what starts happening is that in school we're said that okay, the people who can do art, like who can literally paint and color and all that, are the creative kids, or maybe you're doing music and dance. But there is so much creativity in robotics engineering, in marketing, in like communications. I
Even
think like that
even
yeah,
surgery. I always give the example of surgery,
yeah,
which you think is
yeah.
very tech.
Creativity is basically when you can think in new ways and find solutions that did not exist before. And a professor of mine at IIM really joked about this, that everyone's creative, every profession is creative. Only finance, you should not be creative. You should do it by the book. Literally everything is creative, and you can find your creativity in it. So yeah, we're all born creative. Some of us get a chance to practice it and continue practicing it, and the others kind of need to kind of reinvigorate if you're missing it in life. Yeah.
I, I'll again add to it because I remember Shiksha introduced herself as a teacher, and her question is, can creativity be taught? Research proves that creativity is a teachable skill,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
everybody is creative. You're born creative. It is in our nature.
Yeah.
The fact that we forget, I mean, through conditioning, we forget that we are creative, or we fall into the trap of various definitions around creativity. But every human, you're a human, you are breathing, you are alive, you are creative. But
100%.
it can be taught. That, I mean, there is it is you can further it through teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people are asking about the book name, so I've put it in the chat. It's called The Artist's Way. And the second book that I also recommend, which I feel is very similar in content but written in a very different style, is Creative Confidence. One is written in a slightly, you have to believe in the universe sort of a way, and the other is written by the Dave and with
David and
Tom Kelly,
David Kelly.
David and Tom Kelly, who started IDEO. So it's written in a more technical or like businessy way. So whatever, like I love both of them. I've read both of them because my brain works in both spheres. But you can read both these books. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Shakib has another question. He asks, how much does spirituality and culture influence your work?
A lot. I mean, so I have formally studied Buddhism, like I've done a diploma in it, and it's a very philosophical and psychology-based view of basically what was taught in the Nalanda University. It's not so like Buddhism has philosophy, psychology, and religion. So keeping religion out of it, there is all of that. And spirituality essentially is that you believe in something bigger than yourself. That's the very broad definition of spirituality. So I think if I have to believe that there is an inner critic, and like my culture, the culture I'm raised in, it's not Indian culture per se, but the fact that India is a collectivist culture, the things your parents say, the things your uncle, auntie, falana neighbor says, all of that is also culture, right? And that way it has affected everything that we do as creative people. And yeah, long story short, it definitely affects everyone's work. And especially as an architect, I think I'm so used to like looking at the context, looking at these factors and that factors. Like everything I do is in a context. right? So I can't separate the context from my work. That's it.
Moving on, Vivek is asking, what are your sources of inspiration and practices followed whenever you hit a design, whenever you hit a design block? I think
Yeah,
we've already spoken about the books. Do you
yeah,
want to share some other sources?
yeah. So I think because I have a lot of friends who are creatives, just talking to them, I'm very lucky in that space that whenever I'm stuck, I will tell someone like, hey, I need to speak to you about this or that. And reading, consuming the right things. I think with Instagram, it becomes very easy to consume just any garbage. Sorry to be rude, but when I know I'm feeling stuck, I will go to specific channels or specific creators or listen to, usually away from Instagram, but listen to specific people on YouTube or Spotify because I need something to get my mind started. I don't know what the correct answer is going to be. I need something to get my mind started. Journaling is a big one for me because literally what is happening, like what I can't process without writing, I get to process it through writing. So that's a very big one. So I think both the ways of overcoming mind blocks are some sort of external simulation or self-reflection. Yeah.
My
Rupa,
my personal favorite, Nishita, is a good sleep.
I was just going to
Yeah.
naps now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always there. I love,
So after your brain has
yeah.
worked very hard, if you can just sleep for two
Yeah.
hours, then the unconscious,
Fog lifts.
yeah, the unconscious, subconscious, and conscious aligns.
Yeah.
So, but most people are not able to sleep because their brain is working very
Yeah.
is winded
That's
up.
what.
But if you
Yeah.
can develop that practice of, when you're so wound up, if you can just sleep for after doing a lot of exercise, if you can just sleep for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever,
Yeah.
when you get up and sleep with a sketchbook or a journal next to you, because the moment you get up, your everything would have aligned and you would be able to just pour everything out. So if you can train your
Yeah.
body to do that, that's a great.
That's very interesting. I mean, I think when I sleep, I'm just knocked out and I wake up feeling, where am I? Especially if
so,
I'm really
so
tired.
that's different. But
But that's always helpful.
I
Like
always
when I'm in very high stress projects, instead of taking a break and like reading or doing, I just try to nap. Yeah,
yeah.
because it really, I feel like my brain is hurting sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And at that time, it's just good. Any time of the day, just sleep for 2 hours or whatever, an hour or so, and get up and
yeah.
it would have aligned. Moving
Okay.
on, Shubhangi.
Rupa has a question. As a designer or an artist, how do we curb ourselves when creativity is around us and we tend to grasp everything but put minimum as needed to create something, to create art?
So, do you mean that I'm gonna rephrase that question to make sure I understand it? And I also try to keep all the answers short now since we've already overshot our time. If you mean that, there's a lot of inspiration around you, but you don't have time to execute it, or you want to put like bare minimum effort into turning it into something, I think I keep an idea journal. If I have a really big idea, which is like months of work or something, I will just write it down in that journal. I will add all the notes and I will capture it somewhere. If it's a small thing, I will maybe put a reminder to do it on the weekend, like spend 1.5 hours doing it. So that's all. But like, I used to be someone who would try to do everything, grasp all the ideas. But in the last 1 or 2 years, I've also really acknowledged that I want to focus on some things more than the other. Like, I'm writing my book, but I will also get an idea to do like 5 other creative projects in the meantime. But I tell myself I've dedicated myself to my book for 2 months or 3 months. And I try to keep the timelines short, otherwise, it feels like, oh, when will I get to work on other things? So I try to give myself tighter timelines to finish some projects so that I can move on to exciting other stuff.
Okay. Rati is saying that she also wishes to write a book later in her life. How or what should I do to start small, what kind of things I should start writing?
To write about your interests, I think. Think about like what interests you the most, because that is the thing that you will then be able to research a lot and build like credible information for.
Yeah.
That's the short answer. Yeah.
Ria is asking, how would you overcome your fear at the beginning of your creative journey?
I didn't. Like beginning of my creative journey, I didn't know any of this, which is why I now go and like speak to people about it that, hey guys, this is a thing. Beginning of my creative journey, I would stay stuck. I would feel stuck, and I didn't overcome my fears in the beginning. That's all.
The beginning of your journey, you should tell yourself that you're a beginner and therefore you're not
Yeah.
expected to perform.
Yeah. And like all these conversations on psychology, creative psychology, like none of it was around when I was a beginner. I feel like even with Instagram, I see more of it now. Um, but yeah, we were told that like you finish the submission or fail.
Karo, socho
So
mat.
I just wanted to pass, so I did all my submissions.
No, it's just that, I don't know why I'm coming across this very frequently in a very, very different space, not creative space only, but some of my colleagues, they are pursuing a course, and they come to me with for some for mentoring or whatever, to bounce off their ideas. And that's a course, and that's quite an academic course, a theoretical course and all of that. And uh, I s- and they're like, but you talk like this and we are not able to. And I'm like, I couldn't talk like this earlier. I've made a journey. You have to make that journey, and you'll get there. So you're a beginner. Acknowledge that you're a beginner. you,
Yeah.
you're going to make standing lines, sleeping lines like a child, and you're going to write a, and then you're going to write cat, and then you're going to write bat, and then gradually you'll get, and then you'll get there. So don't
Yeah.
deny yourself the pleasure of the beginning of a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know
That's
I
what
think
I said about the gap when I read Ira Glass's quote, that it will be bad in the beginning because your ambition is here and your capability is here, and only through doing a lot of work will you get there.
but you'll get there. Consistent effort will get you there. not
Yeah.
not doing anything. So somebody also mentioned this as a metaphor, if that makes sense for everybody, that this thing is like a it's also a technique of procrastination. By the way, I'm dealing with my creative fear, I'm dealing with my inner critic,
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a creative block. These are games our mind plays.
Yeah.
So it's like a rocking chair. It gives you the illusion of movement, but you're not covering any distance.
Yeah. I also I've read this somewhere, and I've actually read research papers on this, that uh, inspiration follows action. It's not that you will first get inspired and then act. You sometimes also have to like do something first, do 100 bad ideas, and maybe 10 of them will turn out to be really great. So yeah.
Actually, sometimes you should tell yourself that I'm going to make 49 bad ideas.
Yeah.
So the 50th one automatically, don't tell yourself that you have to make 50 ideas. Say I have to make 49 bad ideas. And that's
Yeah.
not difficult to do. Like I have to make
Yeah.
49 reject, because ultimately I have to use only one now. So I can make 49 rejectable ideas.
Yeah.
So change the brief.
That's what like divergent and convergent
Yeah.
thinking is. Yeah. Okay.
Trishita is asking, should a creative try to be a jack of all trades or to be a master of one? I asked since you talked about giving ourselves an opportunity to experiment.
I think the industry and the world in general needs both types of creators. It's really so subjective. Like some people's skills are better off as a specialist, and some people's are better off as a generalist. So I can't give an overarching answer for everyone. In my case, in my 20s, I was a through and through generalist. I was jumping into anything and everything. And that's what I spoke about in the beginning. And now in my 30s, I know I'm a specialist. I'm a very niche specialist because of all the experimentation that I did. I have identified a gap that my unique skills can fill. So I'm trying to focus, and I still get enticed by other things, right? Like I still get enticed by other things that are not designed operations, and do some of them, but I maintain that I'm a specialist. So the world needs both of them, and we need all sorts of creatives. So you have to think which one will you be better off as. Try different things and decide.
Carmel has a question. Ma'am, what to do with hesitation that comes every time when we are trying to do something, ask something or say something that happens every single time with me, even right now.
Oh, then I'm glad you already overcame your hesitation and shared that question, Kamil. Um, there's a lot of thinking that can be done about it, but in short, like I would say, like think, are you hesitating because this is genuinely something that can hurt someone, that can have a genuine negative impact, or is it more of an ego thing that I will sound silly? Don't worry about sounding silly. I have sounded very silly in a lot of design seminars where I've raised my hand and asked something, but over time, a lot of people have said that, hey, you asked a question that we were too scared to ask because we felt it was like too basic. And that happened like 6 months back. So sometimes your question might be something that a lot of people are thinking and just not saying because they want to pretend that they're very um, smart and they know everything. So you have to think about, why are you hesitating? Hesitation is fine. All of us hesitate. The inner critic is there for a reason. It wants to stop us from doing something very silly, and something that might endanger our connection to others, endanger our safety. That is why we hesitate. But then, if the hesitation is only for ego reasons or something that's not so harmful, uh, please go ahead and do it. Yeah.
Actually, experiment with that also. No? एक बारी करके देख लो. What happens if I act silly? What
Yeah.
happens if I make
Yeah.
mistakes?
Yeah. Like if it's
Then
only
what happens?
ego things, silliness, just do it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
because sometimes it is the anticipation of the outcome that is bigger than actually what will happen.
Yeah.
There's an entire movement which had no sir pair, if you think about it, which was the Dada movement, and they were just like going against the grain, and they wanted to create something. So there have been like times in history where people just wanted to be silly. So A1, go ahead, do it.
We won't
Rupa
take
is,
any further question. I mean,
yeah,
no
we have already
no
limited.
questions that are going to be put up after this point.
Yes,
Okay,
we've
but we'll
already,
take the questions that are already there, but we won't because in the interest of time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So Rupa is saying, as humans or artists, why do we want validation? And when the response is negative, how to deal with it? Because art and design cannot be replicated and it would not be the same.
Let me just pull up something because I wrote this in the morning. If you guys just give me 1 minute, I will just read from that. Okay, why we want to be validated. Okay, so I'm just reading like the gist of it. Um, the, we all know that we're social beings, right? And that is built into the psychology that the human species exists as a so societally based thing, and that is why, and even if we're doing a personal project, it will become a social experience. If not on Instagram, we will want to share it with people because creativity is also just one way in which we want to connect with other people. Like, I may not go around talking every day about my mind blocks, but literally all of the mind blocks, the 80 mind blocks that I have created art on, they're all based out of my own experience. Okay, and that's my way of saying that, hey, I'm feeling this, and then other people will say that, oh, we're also feeling this, and it's a way for me to connect and exist as part of like the human social species. And it's also that when we talk to people and like the experiences that we have with them, it actually regulates our minds, like it makes us feel better. And that is again psychology. So many of these answers lie in psychology. It's like our words have a very direct effect on each other's brains and bodily functions, and we have experienced how maybe as children, maybe as young adults, we've experienced how it feels to get appreciated, and our nervous system and thus our experience as creative individuals is very bound up with the behavior of other human beings, and for better or worse. So, how a compliment at the end of a hard day can calm us down or inspire us. But exposure to verbal aggression, big or small, really taxes our body and injures our brains. And none of this means that we're weak, we are just human. So, this whole thing of do not seek validation, do not seek external validation, I don't agree with it, because you shouldn't seek external validation when it's turning toxic. There is a fine line there, obviously. But when you're in your circle of creative allies, you're studying a course and you have your classmates and mentor around you, it is very normal to want validation. Don't go out of your way and be like, see this, see this, see this, see this. But you want to share your work, you want to share that thing you've put so much energy into, and it will feel nice if someone says, I resonate with that. So it's a very, very normal part
I think
of human psychology.
it's only when it becomes paralyzing that you're not able
Yeah.
to move forward, because
Yeah.
if I don't get validation and I'm doing
Yeah.
it for validation,
Yeah. That
then
shouldn't be the starting point of it.
that is a problem. But I have a very counter response to this question, Nishita.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel that this also is another what should I say, way of alienating yourself. Why do we have to figure out why do we need validation? Like let's just throw that also out of the window. I don't want to understand. Sometimes this is also, you don't try to understand, just sometimes the doing is good, that I'm going to do it and move forward. In the process, I might understand why I need validation or not. So I'm not saying, I'm
I
saying
think the answer is Instagram. I wanna say the answer is Instagram. Okay,
makes
because
everybody seek validation.
on Instagram there is this big movement that don't seek anybody's validation, but that clashes with our personal experience that we are seeking validation.
But
So
the
the
whole
topic of validation is there, and you can't not think about it. So
no,
if
but
you're
the
anyway
whole
thinking
I
about
was just
it,
going to say, so I'm one of those rare people in this world today who's not on social media,
yeah,
and and I, whatever, for whatever reason. But I'm very surprised that there is a movement on this on Instagram that you're telling me, because
yeah,
Instagram and social media is built around the human need of valid.
it
It
is.
actually, it started with the human need for connection. And very interesting. I mean, I wish we had more time, Nishita, and you and I will catch up on this separately.
Yeah,
Yesterday evening, not yesterday actually, Sunday evening, I was sitting with a friend who was a batchmate and all, and we were talking all about how the entire thing is about experience and expression. That
yeah,
is human life. You
yeah,
experience and you want to express that experience,
yeah,
and you all find different ways of expressing. And all of it is to create connection. Even the person who doesn't share wants connection, but in a different
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah.
So there's no, sometimes we talk about all of this and make it into a problem when it is very, very natural, you know.
I think I feel that the conversations that are happening on social media play a really big role in how we think of ourselves as human beings and as creatives. So it's good to acknowledge it. Sometimes it's good because the question is already there. Just dismissing it, saying, okay, don't think about it. For some time, maybe I can put it aside. But like at 2 a.m. in the night, it will come back to me and be like, why do I seek validation?
No, so there is this psychologist, I think, no, South African psychologist, Susan David. She
Okay.
she
Yeah.
talks about this, that how this pressure of always thinking positive and positive
Yeah.
thoughts and all of
Yeah.
this, how that is such a it's unnatural and
Yeah.
unhealthy and
Yeah.
impossible, you know.
I agree.
So
On that, I agree. Yeah.
yeah,
But
so it's the same thing, that you don't seek valid, don't let it drive your life.
yes. Yes. Don't let it drive your life. That is true.
Yeah. but you will seek it and it is fine.
It's
In
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Shubhangi, let's run through.
Yes, Vivek is asking how can one grow his or her skills as a graphic designer, somebody who can't afford a college or an institution?
YouTube, guys. YouTube is amazing. People put so much effort into creating such educational videos, and I completely understand that courses are not for everybody. Udemy, um, but like YouTube is literally free. I've done a bunch of courses on Udemy and Coursera. The great thing with Coursera is if you don't sign up to get a certificate, you can do the whole thing for free. So there's a lot of free options. Yeah.
Um, Somebody is saying, could you suggest some more of the design books beneficial for designers along their journey,
I'll,
maybe improvement of work? I
maybe
think,
we will share that with the
Yeah, I'll share that separately.
yeah,
I do have a list already,
yeah.
and I'll just share it on
but to
Instagram.
add on to the previous question, I think reading is
Yeah.
also a great way to learn other things and
Yeah,
to like sort of
yeah,
aid with experiences. So reading.
for sure.
Okay. Somebody is asking, how do you manage the pressure of deadlines and maintain a good mental well-being as a designer?
Okay, so my entire profession is built around project management. So I have really worked hard on doing this. And I worked with teams of 20 plus designers and helped them manage their time. So that comes with my profession. Like that's what I focus on the most. I don't have any tips and tricks here. This will be another, Prachi, let's note this. This will be another webinar. Time
Yeah.
management and dealing with deadline. Yeah.
Okay.
But a quick tip on time management is prioritization
Yeah.
and not prioritization, being organized or systematic, and not wasting time in procrastination. When things
Yeah.
have to get done, things have to get done.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody is saying, I relate how you've tried so many things before you finally decided what you wanted to do or enjoy doing. I also come from a very different academic background and tried different roles and fields. And a lot of time passed by figuring out different things. Now that I think that I'm finally doing what I enjoy doing, I fear that I am not too late to the party. Do you think starting a little late would stop me from making my ambition come alive?
I'm guessing you're not 70. And if you're not, then it's not too late. Honestly, I mean, these Forbes 30 under 30 and something under 25. I feel like I've missed out on winning any of those. But I have like, I guess, 40 more good working years in front of me, and I'm going to do a lot. So if you're in my similar age bracket, you're not too late. It's perfectly fine. Build on your skills. Be aggressive about building your skills.
I want to, I never do this, but I'm just inspired or motivated to share a personal story. My father, at the age of 70, after his second retirement, he retired at the age of 60, continued to work again till 70. And
Wow.
then he decided to finally quit. And you know what did he pick up? He picked up one of his childhood hobbies, which he had let gone off at the when he joined the engineering college. So he picked that up probably 50 years later,
Yeah.
started work on it, and that was practicing art of one kind, and finally put up an exhibition in an internet in an art fair. So 70, when you
Wow.
mentioned 70, I had to
Yeah.
just mention he was this, he picked it up
Yeah.
at 70 when he finally
Yeah.
decided, and we were hogging him that ho gaya, bahut kaam ho gaya, band kar do.
Huh.
At 70, when he took his second retirement, he said, okay, now I still want to do something, so I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. So at
I
70,
stand corrected. Like, and honestly, your personal projects, you pick. I want to keep creating personal projects till the day I'm alive. hopefully I can stop working for money at some point. I think that's where the
I
distinction
think
is.
that has also been the case for the kind of people that come to to join our courses. We have a very diverse mix of people from different age brackets and different walks of life. Everybody just sort of comes together to just like learn
Yeah.
design.
Yeah,
So
in my last class at AND, there were people who were 25 and people who were 45 plus learning together, and they were supporting each other so well. Um, and it was just beautiful. I think if you have the thing for learning, people develop a bit of an ego when they're older, which is maybe why some people say that it's too late to learn something new. Or maybe there might be very realistic things like the industry is saturated or something like that. But everything you can kind of navigate around that.
yeah.
It's never too late. I mean, I'm just skipping the name of the dancer, the Odissi dancer, Pratima Bedi. Yeah, she started to learn to dance at the age of 45, 50, I think. Started to learn,
Hmm.
and in dance, there is a element of the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
You start learning dance early because your body is more flexible, and you can learn or train your body into flexibility. And 45 plus is no age for a woman to develop flexibility in her body. That's when her bones start degenerating, in fact. So never too late.
Yeah.
Last
The
question.
last question, yes, last question for the evening we've reached. Shana is asking, after taking a long break or separating yourself from your work, how do you reconnect with your work and your staff?
So I don't have staff currently. I'm an independent consultant, but I'll use the example of like I took a 1 month break from my office when I was in it. Um, and yeah, like I handed over all the responsibilities in a very systematic way. I had 7 projects going on, and I was very clear that okay, this project, this person takes over fully, like that. And then the reverse process happened when I joined back at the studio. And like in 1 month, there was a lot that had happened. So it took me some time to catch up on everything, but it's fine, like doable, I guess. But if there is something more specific in that question that we're not able to get through the way it's written, then I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, there is a process for handover of responsibilities and there are processes for these things. So yeah, that's all.
Absolutely. Wonderful. This has been
Okay,
such a
I guess we
wonderful.
have reached the end of this session. Thank you, Nishita, for your wonderful presentation. I had a ball. It was a great time just to be part of this session. Thank you, Prachi ma'am, for joining us today. And thank you everybody who stuck around till all 50
Yeah.
who have been around since the beginning of this session. Thank you for being around. I hope you had a great time and you also learned something. You were able to take something back from this session. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for being here. With that, I say good night and bye.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Nishita. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.